Thank you. Thank you and good afternoon. Welcome to the Public Works Committee meeting for September the 27th. I'm going to call our meeting to order. Are there any declarations of conflict?
None.
Seeing none, can I have someone approve our agenda? Thank you. Moved by His Worship, second by Councillor McAleer. As you can see in our package, we don't have minutes drafted yet from our last meeting, so those will be with us for approval at our next committee meeting. So I won't ask for approval today, and will allow us to move right into reports. And Riley Tweel is going to speak. We had brought the speed hump program to council already. There was some good discussion and good feedback with different ideas, so they've taken it back as a staff, and they're here today to present two different options, and then we will have some discussion and move what we feel is best on to council. So Riley, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you. So after the report on the speed hump program that was presented a couple months ago, we sort of got feedback on the proposed changes and particularly on a couple components of the proposed changes surrounding the reset times for the speed hump locations, as well as the cap or limitations on the number of speed humps that the city would have. So we kind of took these items, took another look at how we could do things to improve the program for everyone, for residents, for councillors, for staff, and so that we'd still be achieving the goals of the program, really. So this time we're presenting two options essentially on how we think we may be able to proceed with the program. The first option is essentially the same as what was proposed 2 months ago, but we've sort of adjusted the timeline for the automatic reset to from 2 years to 4 or 5 years. One of the things we had heard was that the 2-year reset is a little too fast, probably not enough time for there actually to be a lot of changeover in residents of a particular area, and it becomes a bit of a labor-intensive thing for residents to reapply and fill out the petition and so on. So increasing that to 4 or 5 years was a bit of a compromise on that front. It's essentially the same, that option, the first option is essentially the same as what we had presented 2 months ago, but again with the change to the timeline. This isn't the option that we're recommending though, because we do think that this could lead to either very large wait times for residents to get a speed hump, which we don't want to see, and or the need to continually grow the fleet of speed humps, which can get out of hand pretty quickly for our public works staff in installing and maintaining them. Secondly, this approach doesn't really necessarily promote the fair distribution of speed humps across the city and across wards, and it's rather somewhat biased towards areas of the city where residents are really ambitiously applying for speed humps. So you can get the skew of where they're installed, and you end up with a concentration of speed humps in a particular area just because there may be a certain group of individuals who take a very ambitious approach to applying, which is great, but we do want to see the distribution of speed humps across the city. The second option is a new model that we've developed based on how the City of Ottawa deals with their temporary speed humps. This model would see Public Works increase our number of speed humps in sort of the next season from 75, which is roughly what we have now, to about 100, so pretty substantial increase. But that would essentially be the number that we would operate with going forward. And of the 100, we would essentially break them down proportional to the length of residential streets in each ward, so that there'd be an average of 10 per ward. Not every ward would have 10. Some would have 10, some would have 8, some would 9, some would 10, 11. It would just depend on the residential street lengths in each ward. In this scenario, it would become more of a collaborative approach between councillors, residents, and city staff to select the locations. Councillors would essentially be allocated the number of speed humps that's proportional for their ward. They'd be able to propose locations to staff. We'd work with counselors to make sure that the locations they're requesting are appropriate still. We can't have speed humps on University Avenue, of course, and stuff like that. There's criteria that would still have to be met, but it would be much more of a collaborative approach, and we'd work together to make sure that the locations are good and that everyone's happy at the end of the day. And sort of once the quota for each ward was met, that would essentially be the number that is for that ward, other than maybe some extraordinary circumstances or something specific that might warrant I think like one more or two more depending on the situation. So there's some flexibility, but that would essentially be how we would do it. Ward X gets this number, Ward Y gets this number, and that's sort of how it goes. I think this is a really good balanced approach to everything. It gives everyone more of a seat at the table in deciding where they go. It's very fair and transparent. This is how we select them. This is the number that everyone gets, etc. So this is the option that we're recommending. We think this would be a big improvement for everyone. It would greatly reduce the work that needs to be done by residents, which is one of the most common complaint we get about it, that it's pretty cumbersome for residents to go door to door and petition neighbors and whatnot. So I'm sure residents would be pleased to kind of see that. It would sort of eliminate the need for that petition altogether. The community support component of it would sort of flow through councillors at that point, which I'm sure all councillors get those requests anyway. So it's not really changing anything there. It's just eliminating some work for the residents themselves, which should be good. Obviously, it will ensure that every ward in the city gets their fair share of speed humps. Again, that's been something that's been a common point of concern. It'll allow councillors to have a better avenue to be a part of the selection process, which is good. And then it'll also still have some constraints on things, so we're not gonna go too far one way or the other. We're gonna sort of set the boundaries of what the program is, but it does give councillors more say in the matter, which should be good as well. And finally, one of the biggest things for us as staff, it'll allow us to sort of observe the performance of these speed humps year over year. I assume with a set number in each ward, there'll likely be more changeover in terms of the streets used each year. At the discretion of councillors and staff will figure that out at the time, type of thing. But it'll give us more opportunity to see how they're working, and to sort of plan for more permanent approaches to traffic calming, so we can get away eventually from temporary speed humps, and we can have some solutions that are year-round, that are there all through the winter, that are hopefully more effective. So really think there's quite a few benefits to this option. So we are asking for consideration to sort of go forward with this, but open to some discussion, and that would be that's great. Thanks.
Thank you, Riley. And I think, having basic criteria is important, and then being able to work collaboratively, because, things do change and councillors do hear from the residents primarily, and it will reduce the amount of work that residents have to do. It just needs to make sense with everybody involved. Is there any questions? They're looking at us recommending option 2, which gives, based on the amount of asphalt in your ward, you'll have an average of 10 per ward, depending, and you will have a say as a councillor to be able to collaborate where these speed humps are placed. Councillor McAleer, you have a question?
Yeah, just clarification. Will there be any rebalancing of the existing speed humps that are in place? If there's any inequity or in terms of numbers of speed bumps that are in place, will there be any kind of a reset on that?
They're all taken up, and they're going to evaluate how many kilometers of asphalt are in your ward, and they'll be distributed based on that. So
Perfect.
It will be based on the amount of road asphalt. So yes, so if right now in my ward I have 12 and I'm only really qualified for 8 based on the amount of asphalt,
Yeah.
I'm going back to 8.
Yeah. So you could be up or down depending on the.
Absolutely, depending on
yeah,
how much asphalt.
yeah.
It's a fresh start that way.
So
and it'll be
again, just to
equitable.
confirm, you're saying all the speed bumps are coming up?
Yep, they might go back to the same place. I might say I really want a speed hump on East Royalty Road, and that's part of my quota of 10. And they'll evaluate to make sure East Royalty Road qualifies based on the criteria, and if it does, they'll put it back.
Just a comment. I haven't had a lot of experience with this, but I did have one this spring and used the existing process and, and it worked well. And of course, it was a situation probably not uncommon. Got installed and then, get an email exchange going with one particular resident, how did this happen and who approved this and, back and forth with it. Anyway, this particular resident, anyway, ended up kind of leaving it, and I exchanged and explained kind of the process. And one thing that I liked about the existing process was that I could share with them that the majority of residents on the street had signed, so it gives you an out and an answer. And Riley, I think, kind of we had talked with him, through that particular resident exchange, but it ended up just kind of dying on its own and just kind of.
Going to be more work for us, I think, in order to communicate, because you're right, there are people that you put the speed hump down and they don't want it there. It's loud, the trucks make noise, I can't sleep. So I guess before, if it was coming somewhere, especially in a new place, I'd probably be having a few conversations to make sure that people were aware and were comfortable. But that would be on me if I decide that this is the best option.
And just to chime in there as well, with your concerns there, you can always still use that form if that's how you choose to work with your constituents or residents in your area. If you still would like for someone to pick up that torch and to lead that charge in their neighborhood to get enough support, those tools will still be available to you. We will make that available to you. To use to help you decide to work with your residents and determining where you guys feel appropriate is the appropriate place for these speed humps.
Thank you. So, Councillor McAleer, what Scott Adams on the phone, our manager, has said that there will still be the opportunity to use the tools that are in place right now, where residents would sign. If you want to use that tool in your ward as a means, there will still be access to that tool for you to use.
Councillor McCabe, I think Councillor Tweel would know the corporate history of these speed humps. This has been an up and down issue. I know when I was a councillor that they would go into neighbourhoods on the recommendation of the councillor, and then shortly afterwards, the neighbour that was affected the most by this hump, by his or her front window or bedroom in the front, would be saying, well, wait now, I don't want this. What this petition allows is that 60%, a supermajority of the residents, have agreed to that it would go in this place on the street. So if the elected official goes back to, or gets a call from some residents, no, we don't want it, look, a petition was signed, followed the process. So if we plan to have a process in place that gets, that allows for resident or citizens' input, it has to be consistent and it has to be from start to finish. So I would say leave it in. Do not take that out. If you take that out, then all you'll be doing is answering calls, and the next thing we'll be doing is taking up, removing speed humps, putting them down another part of the street, then you get a complaint there. Soon as you get, and I had this at the door, Riley, when I was campaigning out in Ward 9. And someone said, well, the speed hump's here. I said, well, yeah, 60% of the residents that live here wanted the speed hump, and this is what the place was put. So you talk to your neighbors and get them to change the application. Let that citizen input go ahead. And Riley, when you say 75 to 100, why don't you just go to 150? Like, the requirement for them is getting to be more and more of a demand. Is it not a capital asset? It's capital, or is it an operational purchase? I think it's a capital asset. So you capitalize it. Like, 100, 150, then you have them there, and every year they do come up, right? We don't leave them in the streets and roadways around the city during the winter. So I would suggest purchase more, and then you have them as inventory.
I'm going to let Joey answer that. I know it gets into staffing and resources and time, but I'll let you speak to that, Joey.
Through the chair, your worship, it is a process to put them down. We have a crew that does them, or maybe two crews that go out. Right now, we're running 3.5 weeks, sometimes a month, to get everything in. A little bit quicker to get them out. Then we have to store them. And these things do not store well. Like, they're big and they're cumbersome, and we have to find space for them. So it does get to a point where it becomes a staffing issue, a storage issue, things like that.
Madam Chair, I'm glad that he mentions the storage issue, because as you know, with the new Brackley Point Road facility, both parks, recreation leisure will be going up to that new facility, and so will water and wastewater. So that space that's now currently in the Macalaire Depot will be available for public works, correct?
That's correct. But what they're taking, what they're leaving for us, they're taking from us in our existing yard now. So we're actually, Public Works will be losing space. So the yard that Utilities has and Parks, that's going over to where our number 2 yard was previous. Plus the building took up half of the space in our number 2 yard, and we're taking where Water Utilities was. So we're not really gaining any space. We may be losing a little.
No, you're gaining space in terms of space inside. You're taking over that whole Macalaire Drive.
Inside the building, we are.
Yeah,
for
you're
sure.
taking over the whole building.
That's correct.
Yeah, which is about, I'd say, 70, 80,000 square feet.
But the
Correct,
reason-
Riley?
The reason we built the building though is because Public Works was already busting at the seams. So for the extra space that we're taking, and we're starting to do more service on, we're gonna look at service and not just Public Works fleet, but all city fleets. So we're gonna have to expand our mechanical bays and things like that. So we're not gonna have indoor storage.
Another thing is with speed humps serve a purpose, but if they're everywhere, it's going to be like anything else. I would think they would lose their impact around if every time you turn around there's a speed hump. But there's a lot of speed humps in our city. There is a lot. We have to find ways to make
Madam-
more permanent solution to the
Madam
problem.
Chair, they do slow down traffic. There is a purpose for them. And I can tell you that Gower Street has been waiting for years. St. Pius X have been asking. Like, we have a lot of areas that are stretches of road that residents, and I've heard from them in both 2018 and 2022, and we're still saying, we'll get to it. So if the committee doesn't want to go with 150, go 100, 125, just get them there and then we have them. It's a capitalized item.
Madam Chair, if I may also speak.
Yeah.
Just another thing that we need to keep in mind too. We are doing more and more permanent traffic calming measures. And by freeing up staff time, and that's why we're recommending option 2, because it does free up some of our time to focus on those more permanent solutions. Again, as I've always talked about, we are trying to grow our tools that are in our toolbox for traffic calming, and those are some of the things that we want to focus on and plan to focus on and deploy more of them next year. So there might be some growing pains in the near future, just because I do hear what His Worship is saying. Yes, there are some streets that probably do have some cutting through traffic and some speeding issues. So they may have to wait a little bit longer. But again, as we start to develop our program in terms of traffic calming and installing these permanent features in the road, we're going to see huge dividends at the end of the day. And it's already showing over on Harley Street, huge improvements in terms of traffic flow with the installation of that chicane over there.
Thank you, Scott. So what I'm hearing is His Worship would still like to see, and John McAleer, is there a way to evolve option 2 forward with the ADAPT amendment to have the signature still as part of a required piece? Could we still include that piece in option 2?
I think we could definitely consider that, and it's really good to hear the other side of it from the elected official perspective. because it's something that everyone gets, I get calls on speed humps, and certainly all you do as well. So it's good to hear the component of keeping the resident feedback in. And I think that's a great idea to find a, I think keeping with the structure of option 2 in terms of the allocation per ward, the councillor input on the streets, but I think in addition to that, keeping the resident feedback component for each of those selected streets. So I think that's certainly something we can incorporate, yeah.
So as a committee, could I have someone kind of ask that maybe they include that
Yes.
in the report that would go to council?
Yeah, and Madam Chair, the reason I say that, because that was brought in initially. The councillors from the area would say, when we want to, let's put one down on Harley Street, right? And then it went down to Harley Street. It was in front of a resident's home, and the resident said, well, how did that get here? Well, the councillor put it there.
I think it
That's-
just keeps it open.
that's
Yep,
where it
for
keeps-
sure. So I think if we
would-
could add that piece into the report that will move to council, we will support option 2 going forward, is what I'm hearing. Is that moved by you?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Seconded by you, Councillor McAleer. Councillor Twill, you good with that? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So, thank you, Riley.
Thanks, Riley.
So we're now on to the capital construction projects update. Scott, I'm not sure if I'm just struggling or if other people are struggling, but if there's a way to speak just a little more clearly into your phone, it would be helpful.
How is that?
That is better.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. I'm just swapping headphones here. All right, so I'll just give a committee just a brief overview of some of the projects that we are currently underway. So as we've already talked about, our new building is the final stages of completion, and we're looking at taking or making a move for staff in mid to late October is what it's proposing, just to avoid. Right now, like everyone's extremely busy. There's still a lot of summer work out there, and about mid to late October is when things start to wind down. So that's when that move will be happening. The other big ones that are underway or will be getting underway, street resurfacing is well underway. Big program. The contractor has also started now. It's phase 3, so they are working on all 3 phases concurrently and expect to be done before the snow flies this year. The Eastern Gateway Phase 1 was awarded. The contractor is planning to begin no later than the first week of November. What we're going to see this year is water and sewer lines installed on Grafton Street. So that's all been planned, and we've been meeting with the contractor on that one to ensure the phasing goes well and traffic control is well in place. Sidewalk work, there's a lot underway. And the contractor just finished Irwin and Gates area and is now moving, I believe, back to Hillsborough Park to finish up a couple streets in there. Towers Road, the multi-use pathway, well underway as well. We're just waiting for asphalt now and then the site to be cleaned up. That should be happening within the next couple of weeks. And the last big one that's underway right now is the Fitzroy Street lighting. We expect to see some directional drilling mid to late next week, and then some of the earthworks after that following. So that project will be kicking off and be completed before, I think they expect to be have all the wiring and everything done by November is my recollection. And that's kind of the highlights of the projects that are ongoing. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to ask or answer them.
Scott, I'm just looking for the tenders ready for Sustainability Committee for 2 of the active transportation pathways. So the tender's still going to go. Is it expected that work will be completed this fall?
Is that the phase 3 of the bypass work? Or?
And East Royalty Road from McCrae Drive to McWilliams Road.
Madam Chair, which
So
one
the
did you?
perimeter road, I know I think they are planning to do a good chunk of that work this year, but I will have to double check both those and confirm with you. I'm not 100% sure on the East Royalty Road one, where that is at the moment. So I will have to double check that and I can get back to you tomorrow.
Yeah, it says completed in fall of 2023, so, yeah, it'd be nice to be able to, I think that was expected to start this year. Go ahead.
Madam Chair,
Okay.
which one did you refer to? Was that the Grafton Street East?
No, it
Pathway?
was
saw the
East
East
Royalty Road, McCrae Drive to McWilliams.
I see that one. And what was the other one you asked?
I asked about the Charlottetown Perimeter Highway tender ready for Sustainability Committee as well. Yeah.
Can I just get an update on the pathway? It says sidewalk, but I thought it was an active transportation pathway, maybe Riley or Scott. Grafton Street, Weymouth to Hillsborough. I don't think, that's not the one I'm talking about. I'm talking about the active transportation pathway from the bridge. Hillsborough Bridge, Grafton Street East. down.
Weymouth to Hillsborough,
don't
the
think that's
design
it.
in progress. 75%
Yes.
complete.
So
completed
that
this summer.
one is
That would be
being-
it.
a lot of-
Weymouth is up.
That's being included with the Eastern Gateway Phase 1.
Oh,
That will we originally a couple years ago when we got that kicked off, that was kind of before we really got into Eastern Gateway. But then we realized Eastern Gateway is coming. Let's combine them because they're going to be on top of each other.
yeah. And Madam Chair, through the chair to the Chief Engineer O'Reilly, is the pathway going on the north side or the south side?
The pathway will be going on the south side, so a nice continuous movement from the bridge right into downtown.
And down, well, yeah, the pathway will stop at the Confederation Trail, correct?
This section, I believe, it goes right down to
Weymouth?
it goes down to Edward. This section.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I asked earlier, Madam Chair, that if we can get this open house on this Eastern Gateway plan out to the public, and I know we're looking at maybe November, that'd be great. So the residents, stakeholders can see visually what will be taking place up to the end of this construction year and starting next year. I know with the chair of Parks, Recreation, Leisure, I've been asking the same thing on the same request for an open house in the new Simmons Aqua Arena facility. People are asking me like, what's going on? It's the same. It's the same with this project. Really want to just get a feel of what's there. And if I could just say, Madam Chair, and thank goodness both, well, Riley is here and both, and yourself, Chief Engineer, that Beach Grove Road culvert, I was out to it there last week, and I do have photos, and I'll forward them to you and Riley, Mr. Adams. But that culvert was full right to the top. And I think is that not a 10 by 12 box? Scott?
I believe that is a 10 by 12 or 11 by 12. It's a bit of a unique size.
The box was full. And my fear is that if we get a surge, it'll be coming over the road. I thought that box, was the box designed by EXP or was it designed by us?
No, it was designed by EXP. And it is designed for handling the tidal, the high tides. A storm surge, that's why we did a lot of shoreline protection as well, to handle any of those unknowns but again, it's really primarily the impact when you design that. It's tidal. A storm surge, yes, it could go over the road, but it's not highly unlikely just because of the design and how it's such a tidal area, and we're not really retaining water. It just moves in and out all the time.
It's a flow through, flow out. Yeah, no, understand that.
Correct.
Yeah. It's just that it would have been an opportunity to go with a three-sided rigid frame structure, and then there'd be a clear bottom. Anyways, when I saw it, I said, that's a lot of water going through there. The other question I have, Madam Chair, is Beach Street, which is now no longer Beach Street Park Street corner connector. Is that capital also include the new fence going up along the parking lot? No, it's our project. Scott, did we not say that we
Yeah.
were?
So are you referring to the gate for the folks in and out of the horse track, or
No, that's still an issue, but the issue is for the residents that live in now all of Beach Street. I thought part of that Beach Street, Park Street connector was to install a fence along the south side of the new sidewalk.
no? That was never the intent. Because with the way it's designed now, before with Beach Street, you could fully enclose it and eliminate folks walking to Beach Street. There's the old Beach Street, I should refer to it as, just because it was a cul-de-sac. Yeah, putting a fence along between the sidewalk and the parking lot, you would have to end it somewhere, and so folks would be able just to walk around the end and go wherever they choose. So what we're proposing, or what we have lined up, is the contractor is supposed to return to install the fence, and all along the property line. So those homes that are closest to the parking lot, along their property line between our what city right away and what their property line is, we'll be installing a whole new fence, and that's just to prevent folks from easily getting into folks' backyards.
Yeah, so it's just on the private property lines, correct?
That is correct, because and then I believe as a result, and I'd have to refer to potentially Eleanor on this one, but one of the conditions of extension of approval of the Park Street facility was redirecting the main entrance to that facility and fencing that whole entire area off. So now there would be no reasons for folks, for users of the Park Street facility to be on Beach or Park Street, or they would have a very hard time to get there.
Yeah. So
And there is fence ordered to go along the property line, correct, Scott?
Yes, there is. That's correct.
So
There is.
those fences are going back up along people's private
just two more
properties.
questions on the capital project. Large culvert placement. You got $1 million. Do we have a place for that large culvert?
That was earmarked for some minor repairs, and also start looking at a couple of other areas that are having some stormwater issues. Shamrock Court is one of them. So we're hoping to get an RFP out rather soon on that to start some design work and seeing what needs to be done in those areas.
Okay. And Scott, Madam Chair, in the last capital budget 2022, 2023, we did have $300,000 for stormwater management. We can't take that from somewhere else in this budget to look at it for this year? Or are you waiting for next year?
Well, that stormwater management funds are for our crews. So that's for the pipe that our crews go out and repair. So we just did some work on Sherwood Road. The purchase of any new material, all that gets charged to that account. So that stormwater management is for that, hiring equipment, all that stuff for our crews.
But we could look at moving some money from these tenders that are going to be canceled that won't be happening this year that we approved already in the budget, couldn't we, if we wanted to add some money into a stormwater management?
That's what I'm suggesting.
Like there's a few things we're going to be talking about coming up.
I just advise folks the likelihood of getting any more work completed this year is very, very low. Contractors are pretty much backed up right now. They can do some off-season work, like we expect to tender out Spencer Drive extension here this month or early next month, and that's mostly just earthworks and gravels. There's some capacity to do that kind of November, December, but if we're doing pipe work under roadways and things like that, I'm a bit cautious about tendering any more of that because I don't think we would get any bidders to do that work this year.
I think you can get bidders, but Scott, that leads me into my last question. Spencer Drive, you have it at $3 million, correct?
I think it's under 3, but I have to.
Yeah. So it says budget $3 million.
Okay. Yep.
So you're expecting to run a road through that terrain for $3 million?
No, that will likely only be a portion of it. Once we get the estimate back, then we will be coming back to council to have a chat. But at the end of the day, they wouldn't be able to build the whole road this year. There's just not possible. So we'd have to rebudget so much anyway for next year. And that's how we would bring it to council. 2 phases, essentially. 1 contract, but 2 phases, or being completed over 2 years.
So this is September 27th. You're telling me that a contractor's going to get in there before the snow falls to start work on that?
Yeah, December. It's a great time to do earthworks and bring gravels in. We're not paving. We're not.
Okay, that's same with that's the same thing as stormwater management. Okay, I just want to say that we're not doing this, Riley, Scott. We're not doing this in parts and pieces, right? We're going to get a design and then go out to tender for the whole
Yes.
road. We're not going.
That's correct.
Like, we're not just going to get into
The
it. and then
system has detected that a few lines are still connected to the conference and will attempt to disconnect them. If you wish to remain in the conference, please press star 1. 15. To dial out, please dial the area code and number that you wish to connect to the conference, followed by the pound sign. Press star to return to the conference.
It is. Yep. Okay, that's all I wanted to ask, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So Scott, I'll look forward to the update on East Royalty Road too, because hopefully that work gets
Absolutely.
done before the snow flies. All right, we're moving
absolutely.
into tenders. The first tender is the Seaview Boulevard Reconstruction Project that we approved. And staff is asking that we put a resolution to council to reject the bid that came in as a result of the tender submission being incomplete. Do you want to speak to that, Scott?
Yes, and I do apologize. I should have changed this. So technically, after a discussion with finance has rejected it. They have the authority to reject the bid. And the reason why the bid was rejected, we had stipulated in the contract that the work had to be completed by, I believe it was November 30th of this year. The contractor scratched that date out and put in they would not start until sometime next spring and end sometime late summer, early fall next year. So that's unfair to other bidders if we are going to accept that. Because, if another bidder saw that and said, hey, I can do it next year, but not this year, it's an unfair bid. So that is why it was rejected. So I don't believe it has to go to council as it was rejected at finance. So we can re-tender it, change the dates in it, and then it's now a fair tendering process for all contractors to be able to submit a bid on it.
Okay, and if I could make a recommendation before I let councillor speak, I know residents in the area were quite excited about this project happening this year, and it would be really nice if we could get some communication out to them to let them know that the project's not forgotten, it's just deferred.
Absolutely, I 100% agree, and I think that is the goal. Will be a letter to each homeowner advising them what has happened, what is the forecast for getting this done next year. Definitely, communication goes a long way, and we want to try to make sure the residents are kept up to speed on these unfortunate matters.
Yep, thank you for that. Do you have anything, anybody else? Councillor McAleer?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to the chair or whatever, to the manager possibly, just on the, on the incomplete tender, not being able to get it done, Scott, probably goes without saying that wouldn't expect it, the tender to be anything less than what was probably budgeted or what this one came in at, 3.7 million. I'm assuming pricing is continuing to escalate and not plateau or any kind of reprieve on possibly the pricing.
Again, it's hard to speak for the industry, but all I can say is it was significantly higher than our estimate budget. And our budget, our consultant put it together based on unit prices for this exact same type of work that we have seen already awarded this year. So it was quite a bit higher than that. So is there a good chance it could come down? Yes, there is a good chance. We do hope it comes lower. But again, we can't predict the industry or the cost that it takes to do this type of work.
We'll hope that it does. Your worship, do you have a question?
On this tender, yeah, I'm just looking at the capital projects, the sheet that the Kelsey gave out to us, and it showed that Public Works put 2 million in, and Water and Sewer put in 875. So the breakdown for that, Scott, is that just 3.7 or 3.8 million for just Public Works?
Your worship, I believe that is the entire amount
Okay,
for the
so-
project.
They must have it broken down for water and wastewater. What's water and wastewater? Is that the higher or the lower?
We would have to, we can follow up with that, and I can
Oh,
provide
yeah.
those
No,
numbers.
that's, I wanted to defer this. I want to see the numbers.
It's rejected. It's not happening.
We voted on it?
No.
Yeah,
They
well, I'm
shut
not-
it down at finance. They closed it at finance because there was an incomplete submission. It's got to go back out to tender.
When you say there was an incomplete submission, there was only one bid, right?
Yeah, but they were not able to, the deadline to start the work was for November of this year.
Right.
They scratched that out and indicated they wouldn't be starting the work until next year, which finance felt was not fair to other tender possibilities to come in. So they're going back to tender to give everybody an opportunity to rebid.
Okay, so, Madam Chair, you sit on finance. Did you look at the two numbers? There had to be two numbers.
I don't recall this coming to finance yet.
Well,
No, it hasn't. It
okay,
has
so
not
we
come
didn't
to
reject it
finance.
at finance.
It rejected at the staff level. So when tenders come in, they get looked at in terms of completeness.
Okay, so the
And there
tender
have been-
was incomplete. That's what you're saying, correct?
Correct.
It was, yes.
Okay,
Because, and just to confirm, it was stated in the contract that the work had to be completed by November 30th, and they said they were not even going to start until next year. So again,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
unfair to other potential
Yeah.
contractors.
yeah.
You had stepped out when he had spoken.
So just on that, Madam Chair, this happened with Beach Grove Bridge replacement. Remember the bid came in, we had two bids, Birch Hill and ICS. And ICS was the successful bidder, Scott, and they couldn't fulfill it, so then we went, is this similar situation, similar tender? Do you remember?
So no, that time was, if I recall, I'd have to go back, but I know it was a different situation. It was not the same situation in that case.
So for this tender, it's incomplete.
They're
Okay.
going to communicate with the residents. The project will go ahead. They're going to retender, and they want to make sure that they do it the right way.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Okay. Thank you, Scott, for that report on that. Now we're going to, oh, sorry, Ms. Eleanor, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just point of clarification, the recommendation of the report is that council reject it, so committee doesn't have the authority to reject it. It's got to go through to council.
Oh, I just understood that it was shut down at finance, so it still has for us to.
Yeah, even if it went through finance, which I
No,
just
the
heard, I don't
staff.
think it's gone there yet. But if the report,
Okay.
and that's what that recommendation is. So ultimately, council has to reject
Perfect.
by resolution.
Can I
and
have
we're
someone
good to
move
go.
that?
And just through
So
the chair,
my-
to the CAO, again, it's obvious the tender was not complete. And this has happened in another department where the tender was incomplete, but we went ahead and discussed it and passed it through. I'm glad that we caught it before looking at it in hindsight. So if it's an incomplete tender, it's rejected. That's it. Correct? Riley?
That's
Scott?
correct. That's correct. It was incomplete, so it was rejected at the staff level. So I do apologize. The report should not have had a recommendation of council. It should have been only an
Information.
FYI for information
Yeah.
It's just
only.
information.
That-
It's an information. Yep, for sure. So we'll clarify that. It's just an error in
We-
our package, and
exactly.
it'll.
We will address it and change it before the package
Before
goes
council.
out. We'll make that change. Yep.
Whew, okay, very good. Thank you. So the next tender that we're looking to get to move to council is the Queen Street Stormwater Management Study. We had discussed this at committee already, whereby they were going to go out, we were going to have an engineer review, study, and prepare recommendations on issues relating to our stormwater management in the area of Queen Street, which is known area for local flooding. They're asking that we move the bid for CBCL Limited in the amount of $60,000 plus all applicable taxes. So if there's a specific question on this tender, and if not, I need someone to move this to council. Moved by Councillor Twill, seconded by Councillor McAleer. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. The third one is for a 12 capacity hand-fed towable chipper. The bid of Atlantic Coastal Equipment in the amount of $63,995,000 plus all applicable taxes be submitted.
Moved.
Moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor Twill with a question to follow.
Yeah.
You can ask your question.
Joe, just a question for you. This chipper, is this, in terms of the different type models, is this the best one that you're looking to purchase? And will this have the capacity to be able to do the job that's required?
Yeah, so they took all those factors in when they were looking for a design, and this is the one that they come back with, this is what they want. This is the one that'll get the job done.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it is what they want and we're not going with a lower base model. And this will have the capacity and the longevity to be able to do the job. There's a lot of work out there, as you know, and it'll be able to accommodate all those needs.
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
So the motion's on the floor to move this with question being answered. All those in favor? Everybody's in favor to move that forward? Great, thank you. And our final tender is another rejection from our Hillsborough Hall new elevator. The bid from McLean Construction for $1,335,039 plus the taxes be rejected. Justification for this is after discussing with engineering consultant Coles Associates, staff anticipate retendering in the coming months with a change in the scope in the schedule with hopes that the overall cost will be lowered. Scott, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, as you see in the report, we also received a commentary from our consultant on that. We both agree that it came in significantly higher. We're in discussions right now with the consultant. Our consultant's actually also conversing with the industry and the suppliers of the elevators to see why we would have gotten such a high bid and also why we only received one bid. So once we collect all of the information, we will be adjusting our scope, whether it's adjusting the schedule or making some modifications to the design to bring down the cost. Those are the things that we're going to look at over the next month, and then hope to go to retender here rather soon.
And I see that the projected work is in May, as long as it's done by May, and we have you believe there's still lots of time to go out and redo this in that time frame.
Again, that's one question we're going to have to look into. Is May even an achievable timeline? It might be a constraint on just the elevator delivery. So those are the questions that we are asking and hope to get some answers relatively soon so that we can adjust our tender accordingly so that we can get additional bids potentially and lower prices.
Thank you. So I need someone to move that we will reject the tender that was received by McLean Construction.
So just a point of order, Madam Chair, just to go back to what our CAO said about the other tender, is this not a rejection from the department? Is it not?
No, this is different because the bid, the package was 100% complete that I'm aware of. We'll double check that, but because everything was there and complete in terms of what was put out in the tender document, then we will we can't reject it at the staff level. It just can't. It's a council decision at that point in time, and it's at council to either award it at a higher cost or allow or reject it and allow staff to go back to the drawing board and adjust the scope accordingly.
It sounds like we had so much, right? We had so much budgeted, It's over tender. And now we're either going to have to change the scope and bring the price down that way or put it back out to tender to see if,
Could I just ask, Madam Chair, through you to the Scott
Yeah.
Adams, the chief engineer, because he wrote the report?
Yeah.
It says, after reviewing this tender with the engineer and design consultants, Coles Associates, it was determined that the bid price is significantly higher than the project budget of 580,000. It was determined that the price can be contributed to several factors. Did he mention, I didn't hear I can't hear him that well. Did you mention the several factors?
Yes, yeah. So several factors could be timeline deliveries for
The elevator.
potentially the elevator shaft. So if that's at the end of the potential schedule that we permit under the tender, they may factor in overages in terms of penalties that we may charge them, or have late night work or extra hours, overtime. All these types of factors can lead to these higher bids. Of course, we're not putting these bids together, so we don't know all the ins and outs of why the price would be higher than anticipated. But those are the questions that we want to try to get some answers from the industry on, and make those changes in our scope of work in the tender document so that we can go to retender and hopefully get additional bidders and lower prices.
So, Madam Chair, this issue has been going on for 2 years. It evolved from an event that we had out at the Hillsborough Hall 2 years ago for the opening up the active transportation pathway on the arterial highway, and one of the participants couldn't get up to the second level because he tried to use the chair and the chair wasn't working. And as I've heard, the chair is working, doesn't work, but it's not convenient for all persons with handicaps. So if it's 1.3 million, I think when the building was built back in the 80s, they probably didn't pay that much for the building. So can we not look at some other way? I know that on the ground level, there's no problem getting into the ground level from the back door. It's getting it up to that upper level. Can we not look at a ramp that gives that 3% incline? Because that's all it is. It's about getting into that second level without using that chair, and that chair takes away a lot of space in that up and down, that split level entry. I'm just looking at other options. I think the residents would appreciate that too, but it's to get that access to the second level. The bottom level, Madam Chair, there is a ramp that goes right down, and it's on, I believe, Joey, is it not it's on asphalt level to the doorway, and there's a lip in, so that's not an issue. It's just getting to that second level. So, I'm just looking at creative ways to make it happen so that we can accommodate for persons, not just in wheelchairs, but seniors who are in walkers or persons that are suffering in knee injuries or hip injuries.
and I think that's what this is an opportunity. With 1.3 million was over double what we budgeted. So right now, we'll reject this, move this to rejection, and hopefully they'll come back.
Can we
with
look
a-
at other options,
Yeah.
Madam Chair?
I think so, Scott? We'll always be looking at a way to be able to accommodate for the best financial dollar.
Absolutely.
As
That's
Councillor-
part of the review process.
As Councillor McAleer said, is it about eliminating the elevator? Well, I think there are only 2 elevator suppliers in the world, Otis and, what's the other one, Scott?
Is it
Stations?
Cone or something?
What is it?
No.
Anyways, there are only 2.
yeah.
So all we need is an option 2, some other options. That's what I'm asking for, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
We will do that, and so while they proceed to do all that great work, I need someone to move that will move to council to reject the tender. Moved by Councillor McAleer, seconded by His Worship. All those in favor? Everybody? Is there any new business we'd like to add to our next meeting? Not tonight, but if there's anything we'd like to add to our next meeting? Yes, Your Worship.
I just want to say that it's been a very fruitful and productive meeting to get all the business done, and I want to thank Kelsey for the great meal.
You are funny. That was a very good, organized, effective meeting. I need someone to move to adjourn. Moved, seconded. Thank you, everybody, for tonight.